Good morning. How are you today?
Hello, I'm feeling pretty good.
That's good. Well, thank you for your time and your willingness to share your views and experiences. As you know, I'm a student of the University of Queensland conducting a small study for an assessment. The purpose of this study today is to look at the views of people aged between 60 to 70, specifically on leisure activities such as gardening and stress. The interview will go for about 40 minutes to an hour. If you need a break at any stage, just let me know. This session will be recorded using a recording app, and I may take a few notes as we go, if that's okay.
No problem at all.
Alright. Just as a disclaimer, anything we discuss today and all personal information will be kept strictly confidential. Your interview will be de-identified to ensure this. The only people who will have access to the information are the students conducting the study and the tutor who will be marking our assessments. Do you have any questions or concerns at this point?
No, I think I'm pretty good to go. Thanks, Thomas.
Okay.
Oh, thanks.
Cool. It's okay, you can identify me.
Okay.
They will know who I am anyways. It's not really an issue. Anyway, so you've already given me your consent to participate. However, please know that you can withdraw at any point. Feel free to ask us any questions or to raise any concerns that you may have.
Thank you.
Do you have any questions?
No, I'm intrigued and interested to carry on.
Okay, so my first question is, tell me about your experience with stress. It's quite a broad one. You can talk about anything to do with stress that you...
Yeah, I think most people have a moderate amount of stress in their day-to-day life, and it's a given, and really it's not about the stress, it's about how you deal with the stress.
Okay. How often do you specifically experience stress?
More than half the days of the week, sometimes only to a small degree, but reasonably frequently.
Okay. Tell me about how your stress levels change throughout your normal daily routine.
If I get outside, if I go outside and do something, if I exercise, it's a huge stress relief.
Okay. So is there any particular time where you're more likely to be stressed?
No, because I've got a pretty wobbly kind of life, very open plan, because I don't work.
Okay.
So, my day is fairly fluid.
Fair enough.
Which helps.
Yeah.
In some ways, and actually causes stress in other ways.
Okay, so you feel like it could do a bit both, your free time in a way.
Yes, if people have got too much time on their hands, that's probably a bit about anxiety, really. But that's a major stress.
Okay.
Form of stress.
How would you describe stress? What do you think stress is?
Stress, to me, it seems like it's hard to define, because it's many different things to different people. So it's any. I guess for me, I think it's anything that causes mental discomfort, or any kind of distress, whether it's however that may manifest. So any kind of distress to an individual.
So, what emotions do you think accompany your stress, specifically, more so?
Emotions. There's anger. Sometimes there's anger.
Okay.
Certainly sadness. Probably the two big things I could think of right now.
So you've been talking about these emotions that come with stress. Do you feel that there is also positive and negative sides of stress? Like,
Yes,
so,
I do, because sometimes the stress that you're feeling, or the distress, the whatever it is that you're feeling, actually prompts you into action. Sometimes it prompts people into inaction. So it very much depends on where you're at in the first place. That's why I said, I think, about stress. It's not the stress, but it's, to me, more about how what's in your kit to deal with it.
So what contributes to your stress normally?
Feelings about myself sometimes, but also other people's interference.
Other people's interference.
Interference in me. So yeah, other people's opinions, or yeah. So what did you say? What is it that contributes to?
Yeah, what contributes to your stress?
Short answer: other people.
Okay.
Saying that, I know all too well that other people, it's not actually about all of them, it's about how they make me feel, and I'm in charge of that. But that's what I think, yeah, the stress is internal.
Okay, so other than just other people, and is it, so is it...
the world.
Yes, so it's like things that are out of your control are more stressful to you than things that are in your control kind of thing.
I think so.
So do you feel that there's certain things that you can control? What would be examples of that which you can control but still stress you out?
Things I can control that still stress me out. How it still stresses me out if, even though I'm in control of what I do in a given day, if I don't then actually go about doing that, or those things, or some of those things, that stresses me out. And to me, that makes me anxious. So stress and anxiety are kind of, they're not. I'm sure in the great scheme of things, they're not one and the same, but that's probably how I describe it a bit more than most.
So you previously described that it's quite important, more so to think about how to deal with stress rather than actually to just think about your stress all the time. So what would be some of the ways that you would manage you being stressed out normally?
Yeah. Being in the great outdoors, whether that's my own backyard, particularly now because it kind of has to be, in my own backyard, or in the bigger outdoors. Like, I love getting out into nature. I'm very connected to nature. So, or to the beach. Literally, if I get to the sea, I become a gleeful child.
That's nice.
Yeah.
So, what about the outdoors really makes it so stress relieving for you?
The peace and beauty of it. It's uncomplicated. It's simple.
Okay.
Less decisions to make.
Yeah, that's quite interesting. So you've been talking about doing outdoorsy kind of stuff. Is it related to exercise that actually reduces your stress? Maybe the releasing of that energy, or is it somewhat related to actually escaping certain things and not having to worry about
That's
them?
Very good.
Or
yeah, I think both of those things. I think they're definitely, it's not a conscious choice to have the old endorphins released, but definitely because I know it's a fact that it happens. It's got to be a part of what makes me feel good. Without my conscious decision or consent, but that must be what helps, because I'll go out for a long ride or a long walk, bushwalk, or go for a swim. Any and all of these things, I always feel better very quickly afterwards.
Okay, so that's a kind of release of it.
That's the sort of what the physical chemical side of it. The then just the participating in the activity, it also is a sense of accomplishment.
Mm.
And you said about the was right too about it because I don't have to decide much about what to do or what's the next step. Make decisions, procrastinate about what to do. Um, just more basic, I guess. It's just back down to the basics, hone down to simple. Or even if it is in the yard, the plants. I can choose whether or not to make my own little patch of nature look more pleasing to me or not.
So it's this freedom of choice that gives you a stress-free experience when you are away from certain things, I guess.
Yeah, to a degree, yeah. Also, then that we were saying before about control, about not about control, but about well, you were saying what we have control over. When I was mentioning about other people, I think that there's a stress related to not having control, and unfortunately, that's why. I mean, I try to avoid it personally, but I think that's why a lot of people then do have controlling behaviour because that's less stressful for them because they're exhibiting control, having control over something or you, and that makes them feel better.
Yeah.
But it makes me feel worse.
Okay.
Not sure. Yeah, I might have taken you away a bit then from where you're trying to head with what thoughts, but
Oh no, it's okay. I'm just trying to get your perspective on the whole
cool.
stress thing and how it plays a part in your life and that kind of things here. So I'd like to kind of shift the topic to the specific area of gardening. Do you often participate in gardening at the moment? Do you have a garden that you tend to?
I do. It's dishevelled and it's a big backyard of mess. But but it is still my garden, and
yes.
Right now I'm spending because it's funny because it got pretty bad. It's gotten so bad that I can no longer ignore it.
Yeah.
I have to do something about it, and even though it's a mess and a lot of work, it's giving me enormous pleasure.
Okay.
Even look at the backyard, just pulling weeds, because there's a view to knowing that. It is purposeful to be getting rid of the crap, the things you don't want to grow, knowing then with the view that it's egged me on to make a bit of a plan as to what I would like it to be like, which may or may not actually ever happen. But I've been spending a lot of time. Literally, I can't draw at all, but even sketching with little rabbit ears up what the backyard could look like, even without a lot of money and a lot of other people's input, just how I can take it from pretty bad to reasonable. Because that's the first step, and then after that, well, who knows? We'll get better and better all the time.
Yeah, that's kind of where I wanted to start this topic of gardening in a way, is that just to describe, so that was a bit about your experience of gardening, but I would also like to talk about what you define as gardening, because in certain scenarios, someone could just, have one pot plant, which they devote 5 minutes to a week. Is that gardening, or is it like a thing where it could also maybe be a...
okay, well this is interesting.
Maybe it could even be something like you were saying about... more management of your garden because it has overgrown, or let's say like even more extreme situations, a tree could fall over and knock into your shed or something. So that would be more like a maintenance kind of gardening, which is a little less hobby-like. So it's kind of just trying to figure out how you would describe gardening as a hobby, like,
Um,
or just
I'm the sort of
gardening
person
itself.
I'm the sort of person who thinks it's very interesting because everybody would answer this differently because the real purists, true gardeners would say, well, yeah, no, pulling out, there are certain things that are not gardening. They are, yeah, yard work, maintenance, etc. But I personally believe that because everybody's experience of the world is different, somebody might have a balcony, only have a balcony, and one pot plant literally. Well, as far as I'm concerned, that is their garden.
Okay.
And so when they are loving, living, or keeping that plant alive or not, that's gardening.
So, what inspired you to first begin gardening? Is there some sort of in your childhood, or was there a garden, or was it a family member, or
Never been high standards, but yeah, my dad liked to grow. He wasn't a gardener. He, and so that's perhaps partly where I have my broad sense of what a garden really is, because it's whatever it is to you, as opposed to what it's supposed to look like or what somebody else thinks should look like, or my next door neighbour's garden. So I guess really, my garden to me, it probably depends yard. And if you don't have a yard, you've got a balcony, then so technically speaking, I'm probably not. It's not what many people would describe as a garden or gardening, but to me, your yard is your garden. Garden's an old, I think it's like an old English word. I don't know where it really comes from, but that actually have got restraints on it.
Mm.
A little bit.
Yeah.
And I don't think that applies to me. Yeah, would you say? Oh yes, back to my dad. He liked to grow things, but he was very random, very haphazard, within a few little strict guidelines of his own. The strawberries, the lizards weren't allowed to eat the strawberries. He liked the rosellas. Wanted to try to get enough rosellas to make a bottle of jam, which I don't think he ever did. And so I think I did get even that first interest. Because, as I said, even though we didn't have a very good yard, we certainly didn't have a garden. My dad, and not my mum, not at all, but my dad liked to grow a few things, maybe to eat, and have some pretty flowers.
Okay, so that might be one of the reasons why people actually do gardening, is it could just be also, apart from the hobby side of it and the experience, it could also be the result of it, having like a fresh fruit or produce or something could be some sort of a motivator for them.
To have actually, that's very purposeful.
It's like a rewarding kind of thing. Obviously, some gardens may not produce it. If you have a pot plant at home, it's unlikely to.
That you're going to eat those leaves.
Yeah, no. So one of the reasons why I've been talking about this whole where the, let's say, boundary of gardening is, because for two main reasons. One reason is the fact that upon other thought and talking with other people, I've discovered that sometimes gardening changes its role in your life. Like maybe at some point you did have a garden and then you were to move house or move to a city or something where it wouldn't be so much of a thing, but then there would be other ways to implement it or continue, like
desire,
like looking at ideas such as like reading about gardening or talking to people about gardens or their gardens,
enjoying their gardens,
or visiting a botanical garden. Do you think that it's still how does this work with regards to maintaining a hobby if the physical existence of that hobby changes in your lifestyle kind of thing?
I think exactly those things you said. I think to me, it is broad. It is a broad thing. You can express it in many ways, and it might be only being able to enjoy someone else's garden, or still being interested in what's growing in this season when you buy your food. So, just for example, so I think it's very broad, and I think a very extensive topic.
So, would the way you have carried out gardening from your childhood, with your learning from your dad how to manage strawberries or whatnot,
Yeah.
to growing up to managing your own property, is there anything that's changed? Has the presence of a garden gone away or come back, or your just motivation towards it, or anything like that? Has it?
It does change, I think, depending on the other on where your life's at, the other demands in your life. When I raised a family, I didn't really tend to the garden as much. I did maintain the yard, but I wouldn't say I was a big gardener by definition. I wasn't growing food, and
That's
I
interesting.
think it changes not only because of your situation, but also because of your mental state.
Yeah.
So I'm basically pretty lazy. And gardening is not for the lazy.
Yeah.
On the whole, you need time, effort, time. You need the time just in the first place. Then you need to be willing to make the effort of using that time. You need a bit of money. And I do believe that it's probably a passion, whatever the cause and whatever you've taken it up upon, has to be something that you actively want to do to perk up your environment.
So do you
Bring
think
nature to you, yeah.
do you think during those times where, let's say, you were more preoccupied by having a family and whatnot, do you think other forms of carrying out garden-like activities, such as reading about them or talking to friends about their gardening or visiting gardens, was that ever a substitute at all, or was it not that much a thing?
Now that you say it, it probably was, but not a conscious substitute. But you know, you go to the parks, take the kids to the park or to the gardens, and I think most people, even if they aren't gardening, whether they're just letting it lapse or it's never been their thing, they actually appreciate gardening just every day by the fact that we're drawn to trees, and I'm sitting here on the river, but I'm looking at some of Brisbane garden. Garden isn't just my garden or my backyard. I think somebody's garden, all of that stretch of river there and all of that stretch of river there. It might be the council, it's not individuals, but ask me the specific question again.
Oh, so I'm just trying to think of how exactly to word it. So yeah, this is the basically just trying to understand your view of gardening. Is a good example is, let's say, interacting with something like the council garden. Is that some sort of substitute for having your own one where it's not as easily possible, or something like that?
Absolutely. If you've got an overgrown backyard, or you're working on it and it still looks nothing like what you want to have peace, green peace in your own space, then I think maybe without realising it, I will come out and look for a replacement elsewhere.
That's kind of funny. Reminds me of when my room is messy,
Yeah.
and I go to the library to
tiny space.
find a tiny space.
Yeah.
That's quite interesting. Okay, so right now at this point, how often would you say you actually carry out these activities of whether it's weeding or whatever, or actually every day?
Yep.
Okay.
And I've come to look forward to it, even though still at the moment it's the work part as opposed to the reward part.
Yeah, so you don't really have the whole produce stuff, but you have the natural kind of.
I have the embryonic thought in my head that one day I'll be able to get lettuce out of the backyard.
So is it? What really makes it important to you? Do you think, just generally? this whole gardening habit that makes you get up in the morning and do it every day, or maybe not morning. I just said that
because where you live is your own bit of the world,
Yeah.
and if it hasn't, and even though I think I could live in an apartment, I know that if I did, because I wouldn't have earth and ground yard, I would have to have a substitute of green space, leaves, in my face somewhere.
Mhm.
So I get up and do it because it brings me joy. At whatever level you're at, whether it's still the big weed patch or the stuff's actually growing, it's purposeful to be improving it. You're on that journey of dirt to a living thing,
yes.
and I love that. Whether it's a flower, I'm not a big flower person, but some flowers are important because you've got to bring in the insects and the you've got to bring everything in. Big balance. So yeah, it's that whole bigger picture of the whole balance. I've been actually attending seminars recently, more and more, because I've gotten so much into the garden that I want to know. It's actually made me want to know about the bugs, the soil, the plants, the whole cycle, and a lot of things sort of dominoing on from each other, and wanting things to be in balance. Even if the whole planet can't be, my little patch is. So that's a pretty joyous thing.
Yeah, that's interesting. So it seems that even you are looking at gardening in this whole other way of not just physical gardening, but also exploring it, researching it, which is common with lots of different hobbies. Like
Yes.
when I thought of this question originally, I was thinking about, let's say, sports and stuff. There's a lot of people who aren't basketball players, but they watch basketball matches all the time and do that. And I was just wondering if the gardening is also something that people can interact with in such a way that is not necessarily actually doing it, but more like being a fan of it in some sort of way.
Oh, I that's really interesting because I think that's probably what I've done for a long, long time.
Okay.
Because I have this innate sense of nature and growing things and growing things, but I haven't been doing it personally, properly. Well, very well, to a small degree maybe, but not. I haven't really been doing it.
Yeah.
Bit lazy, all the good excuses.
It seems it's a bit broad, this whole definition of when gardening becomes gardening.
Yeah, well, but other people would not necessarily say that. I am probably a bit weird in that sense. But what was I going to say? What was I saying? Oh yeah, how I haven't been doing it, but nevertheless, a few good friends who are, I actually nanny for their garden.
Oh yeah.
So yeah, and or very much enjoy being in that space, and even a few gardeners that I know actually share their produce as well, because most people, once they start growing stuff, they normally have more than they need.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I enjoy gardening because somebody else is doing it too, not just because I am or not. So I definitely think it's very broad, and you definitely can benefit from gardening, as in anybody doing anything in their yard, whether or not you're doing it yourself. Because our yards are all connected as well. So what's going on in the next garden, the next yard, and over there? Most people have got more than one fence line with somebody. So it's not just about your own yard / garden. Sometimes it's a bit about theirs as well.
So it's kind of there's this whole purpose and accomplishment feeling, which is
And connectivity. Go on.
connectivity. What do you mean about connectivity?
Well, because you're connected by we're also connected by our fence lines or not.
Yeah.
We don't all have fence lines. We might have actual green fences, still fences, but so which actually makes me think. Just then, I was thinking how gardens are also very multi-purpose. Some people's gardens that are built in their privacy. You know, you grow things up so you.
Yeah, the trees. You grow tall trees so the neighbors can't look in.
You're looking at garden and everything green as opposed to the dudes next door with his undies hanging and stuff on the line.
So it can be some sort of fence, a wall.
a fence, but a happy fence. Yeah. Yeah.
That's interesting. I never thought of it that way. So you've described a few things about how gardening pretty much affects your life and what you consider it and all those kinds of things. Is it? I was talking about stress earlier, and I was just wondering if how these things link together for you in a way. Is it could you just describe what stress and gardening do?
I think I can only speak for me, but I think, and even for a lot of other people, it's about being connected to the earth.
Okay.
And that makes me, personally, feel joy. I don't really know why. But it brings the joy. And most of us need that. So that's a way for me to get the joy.
How do you feel about the ups and downs of it? Sometimes it's
actually stressful.
Yeah.
Because it's in such bad shape.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's the first thing I thought of too. It's interesting because it both pauses and relieves the stress, which is bizarre. Because depending on your situation, but in my own personal situation, the garden isn't in great shape. So it's here's an interesting thing. I've just realised it. Until I actually started working in it, I didn't realise it would make me feel better. So it's still pretty poor shape. But going out there was already bringing joy. Both the activity, the actual action on the day-to-day basis, because it's like exercise, but with a purpose. You can see the results, which is very rewarding. It's a visual thing. The bins get full of the green waste. So it's another visual. Like, look at what I've done. So long before, in my case, there's any actual. I know somebody who you might know who's got an amazing garden. And I'm nowhere near that yet, but that's something to look forward to. But what I was saying was, yes, it surprised me that the stress I felt because the garden was starting to get overgrown, the yard was getting overgrown, is now actually less of a stress because I'm actually getting out there and doing it. So it's relieving the stress I was feeling about it being in bad shape. And giving me pleasure. So it's a double dip.
Yeah.
It's a double whammy.
That's interesting. So this was I had a question about this, but you've already pretty much answered. So do you feel that there is changes during or after gardening through well, maybe not so much. So you're talking about the change from doing the activity at the start when you think about, oh, it's messy, it's stressing you out, and then you actually start doing it and seeing the rewards and feeling the purpose of it, and then that changes your stress. But this is more talking about so immediately instead of like the start of you. So that's more about like day one gardening into as you progress
Yes,
through it. It's a
yeah.
longer term look at it.
Yeah.
I mean, like immediately on a day-to-day basis, let's say before gardening, 5 minutes into it, 10 minutes into it, an hour into it, or however long you really participate into it.
Yeah.
Do you feel some sort of change in your stress, and how could you describe that in a much shorter kind of term?
Okay, I think I have to remove myself from my current garden situation and think when I was gardening. I'm not sure. I'm not sure about that.
So you don't really. Okay, let me try to rephrase that maybe
Yeah,
a bit.
thanks.
Okay, so I just mean like,
Sorry.
do you notice immediate effects of gardening on your stress? Let's say you've already been stressed out about something today, and then you went, and then you were
Oh yeah.
decided to do it. Would that change your mood in a fast, slow, positive, negative?
Yes,
What would
quite-
really happen?
Quite fast. I can't for me, I can't say that means it's specifically about the gardening,
Yeah.
but it's because the focus on
Yes.
the activity and the purpose of setting about what you're doing, whether it's pulling out those weeds or replanting something or picking some flowers. I do think that it's quite a quick shift.
Quick shift, and so that's just me wondering about how you feel about escape versus the purpose of the actual activity, because sometimes people use other activities, just I can name many,
Yeah.
and the main reason they like it is because they get detached from their current
Yes.
situation. Let's say like video games or something like that could be. I wonder if gardening plays some sort of detachment role from stress or from things. That is it that, or is it more
Purpose
so?
or the escape.
Yeah, exactly. Because
Well, I think that I have to think about that.
Yeah.
I'll think about that for a minute. But I think they're both evident. They're both true. I think depending on what your needs are at the time, and depending on who you are and what's going on for you, I think they could do. I don't think I would say it's clearly one thing or the other.
yeah,
At any given time for an individual or for different individuals. I think, like many things, there would have to be. I would have to say it's both. Definitely, some people probably wouldn't, depending on how they feel, how stressed that. I know for me, I guess, because I'm a relative. I do suffer from a bit of anxiety, and stress is an issue. I think the escape is important, but there would be plenty of people who because they don't have those feelings. It's all about the purpose of the arrangement of the garden and the achievement, all purpose related. But I think many people these days would also use it as an escape, with just like trying to get involved in a game or a movie
yeah.
it's a switch off.
Yeah, so hobbies are quite interesting in
Yeah.
the way that it can be can mean many things. It can be a hobby where you actually do something, or where you are just interacting with a concept, and
Yep.
it could be an escape, or it can be an activity that helps you out. And stress is just a very strange thing like this.
Yes, I agree.
Would you say that gardening is one of the main forms of stress relief,
I think
or
it
do
is.
you have anything else that would be a similar hobby, similar escape, similar purpose that you can gain to cope with stress? Maybe
Yeah, me, my riding.
you're
Riding
writing.
the bike. Yeah,
Oh, riding.
Going out cycling. Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
So, yes, I do, and I guess a lot of people do. And because if I were to be pressed, I would have to say, unfortunately, even though I love being in the yard and I have this broad sense of what gardening really is, most people would not call me a gardener
Yeah.
because I don't have a lot of expertise to show for it. So yeah, I'm not experienced in a way, almost a snobby way, really. That people would say, well, I call that a garden.
Yeah.
And
That's an interesting thing. It's kind of where we started when we started talking about gardens. Is that I've noticed that throughout this interview, your perception of what gardening is kind of seems to shift. It's one of these things that is really quite hard to define as to.
Yeah.
So
hard to put in the box.
yeah, how much of your day would you spend doing this gardening activity on a daily basis, and what would you need to do to make it more of a I consider myself a gardener kind of thing?
I did a lot of heavy machinery.
Okay.
Not much. Not much. I think a lot of people spend a couple of hours a day in the garden, as I do. It's just that at the moment, it's more yard work gardening.
Yeah.
Personally, but I look forward to when I can enjoy it more as a gardener. And I think it would be your yard garden, easy to spend a couple of hours a day in your own green haven.
Yeah. So
Not necessarily working hard.
So it's like a professional kind of aspect of gardening could be if you are just only doing it for the results. Like some people would do that even for work, which you obviously would not consider your hobby to be a profession in such a way. So maybe that's what's making you not really think that some people would view you weeding your plants and stuff like that as gardening or something like that, right?
Yep. Also that if you don't, like a lot of things, if you don't keep at it, if you don't keep putting in the time, it goes backwards.
Yeah.
And which then can be stressful. You spend hours out in the yard working to try to achieve a result. Turn your back on it for a while.
That's true. That can apply to lots of hobbies. If you don't experience that reward, as you say, you haven't really been experiencing so far, it's kind of hard to stay committed. What makes you feel like you can continue on it without feeling those immediate rewards? Because this applies to many things.
Yeah, well, because I have noticed that it's good for me. And both for me internally and for my environment externally. So at this stage, the reward is sufficient to keep me going, and because I'm ready for the challenge almost of achieving.
So you still look forward to those rewards someday.
Yeah, I'm thinking about. Well, I know we're talking about it, but I'm thinking about getting out there right now. I know the things that I want to actually go and do.
Yeah.
So it's like a process of okay. I went to the meeting. The meeting was I went into the backyard and did some stuff, and I caused other stuff to be needed to be done.
Yeah.
So it's like I have an agenda already for the next meeting, which is going back in the yard tomorrow. I was out there this morning.
Yep.
And because it's hard work at the moment, so I can only go and do it for a couple of hours. But when I leave it, I make sure I've left it knowing that okay, that's what I mental note to self. That's what I'll come back to tomorrow. So I set myself a little goal. Leave a goal, as opposed to just the whole yard just needs work. So I've actually started to achieve something, and I'm really only just realising this as we speak, as we talk. I realised I wasn't getting anywhere much, and as soon as I started saying, right, I need to focus on something, I need to get to a point, and then at that point I need to say, right, what's next? I've actually been able to achieve more. And that, funnily enough, you would think that might be stressful. Oh my God, I've made this thing, I've left that thing and I have to get back to that tomorrow. It does not add to my stress. It actually makes me feel better.
So how do you think that these flow-on kind of commitments that come from a hobby, how come they don't stress you out? You'd think that if you had more work that maybe it would
I know, right?
be negative, right? Like,
I don't know.
it's
Yeah, it's interesting, but I really am just realising that. I haven't thought about it. I think because why? It's maybe back to that whole purpose. The sense it's got to be. We want a purpose to do whatever, and maybe not purpose so much. Yeah, a little bit. But again, it's if you can see you're getting there's a reward, the results. It's still all tied up with that.
okay.
And if I had a nicer garden, it would be because I'm at that level, so my garden isn't yummy. I can imagine though easily, and I've already started to think about how if the thing I'm deciding that I want to plant and grow there on that side of the yard, when that's happening, I'll have to, while still doing a whole bunch of other things, I'll have to come back and make sure I pick. Got to pick the weeds back out of there, or so it's a project with purpose.
So you're talking about this whole reward thing, and there's certain things that are rewarding without a necessary physical thing kind of being produced by it. Sometimes it's just the experience and whatnot.
Yes.
So like what? I'm basically just wondering, is there a way you've so far tried to, feel free to move away. This is your garden after all.
That's right.
So, have you ever tried to implement any sort of measures to, maybe, or could you describe to me if you've ever, or what you would do in order to maybe have more smaller success checkpoints kind of things, or have you ever tried to do something like that? Because I understand these might come naturally with certain aspects of the hobby, but I mean, like, let's say you plant some sort of thing like a tomato plant or something on the side in a smaller area that you've already cleared out or something like that. Do you do anything to maybe speed up the reward process of your garden at all?
Yes.
What would that be?
I have a front and a backyard. The front yard is already full of lovely growing things. It's full. So I'm starting to pull out from there and putting them and planting, rehoming them. So propagating and moving into the cleared areas because with already existing plants.
So do you feel that the presence of success changes the way you look at future gardening? How would it change?
Yes. I don't know how to. I know what you're asking me. I'm not sure how to answer it, but unfortunately, it seemed that it's a cycle of more improvement breeds more improvement. So by improvement I mean actually growing things in a new spot. As soon as something actually starts happening in one bit of the garden, it inspires me to do more.
Okay.
Yes.
So this is so you're talking about the flow-on effect of doing something. Is that different to the whole? Is it different to the whole rewarding and success, micro successes? The flow on is more. Is it more commitment, or is it more small micro successes lead to wanting more success?
That that.
Okay, so it's
Yeah,
more.
in my case, yes. The seeing something happening makes it easier to think that, well, okay, I can do more will happen. So it's propping up the initial commitment. I do have some commitment, but the commitment is easy to lose if some results aren't attached.
Yeah,
Does that make sense? Yeah.
without reward, it would be more difficult probably for you to.
Definitely.
Okay.
And reward being reward is different things.
Yeah, reward can mean a lot of different
things. Oh my God,
things.
I saw a butterfly, or
Yeah.
I saw a worm. It might not be that whole 6-foot garden is growing, but yes. But reward.
So, what would be the most rewarding aspect of your gardening experience to yourself as a human being? What would you think is the best thing that it provides you, and the reason why you continue to do it?
I do have an interest in growing food. It doesn't have to be a lot, but I do want. I don't know. I just have this yen to actually produce stuff that I can eat. Not have a crop. But definitely that is a purpose that really calls me. It'll be great when having the art that looks nicer. I think without knowing it, there will be a whole bunch of payoffs. But in the back of my head, I know I actually want to grow something, even if it's just the possums that get to eat it.
So it could also. So how does wildlife interact with your garden? Is that something that you want? Maybe that might be something that contributes to why you do it.
Absolutely, because I'm a bit of a green patch in where I'm left in this urban area that I live in, and I love that I'm probably a harbour for animals.
What kind of nature interacts with your garden? Do you have your own animals that interact with your garden? Maybe sometimes people might be getting a garden going that is nice for their pets or something to be around in. Is that something for you, or?
I believe that I don't believe in getting rid of any bugs or garden pests, as some people say.
Yeah.
Because I don't think they are pests. I think they're part of the cycle.
Mm-hmm.
So those animals, small animals, but no, not for pet animals. And I'm happy. I've already got a pretty big stash of animals on the property, so if it's not really a matter of making it better for them. I think, in fact, the more I do, probably I'm initially making it less friendly for the animals, because I'm talking about snakes and possums.
Yeah.
Pretty much, yeah. Maybe a rat or two, I don't know. But eventually, I'm not interested in making a garden in which all of the whatever's in the area and whatever, lizards. I'm not interested in making a garden of pretty pink flowers, so that they can't be there. I'm happy for them to eat whatever, because that's the cycle. If I can have blue tongue lizards, great. Yeah, so if anything, it would be. In fact, I do have some pictures in my head of lizard boxes and maybe a little, not a creek, but rocky patch. So really, my own bit of not the bush, but of the wild, of nature.
So
not a garden. As
I understand. So you're saying that you something to do with leaving it natural in
yes,
a way.
Yes, very much so.
How does control over nature, just control in general, play a role in gardening and your vision and the purpose to it all?
It might be why I'm being not a very good gardener up until now, because I think that when in the past when I've thought of gardening, it does seem like a very contrived and tidy and controlled space where people want to poison stuff and keep all other living things out. And I don't think that's realistic.
Mm.
So I think it would be good. I'm hoping it's good for me to embrace the space where you relinquish control and let it be.
Mm.
And I think that will be very good for me mentally, stress-wise. That won't be an issue. I don't know about my neighbours, but because and that's the trouble. Like I said, it can be a good thing. You've got your fence line, so it connects you to people.
Mm.
But if you don't, people tend to want the same sort of thing next door as they've got. I don't need anybody near me to do what I'm doing, but I could have a problem with them not wanting me to do what I am doing. Yeah. And again, I think, control. Did we talk about control before? I feel like we did.
I think.
Because I think, we talked about how what you can have control over. Because I remember saying, well, other people. I remember thinking maybe we didn't talk about it, because I think control is a big issue about stress. Relate with stress, because mostly we feel stress when we have a lack or a loss of control, and therefore I think that's why a lot of people tend to go a bit more the other way, and the control freak thing happens because they want to control what they can, because there's so much that we can't control.
How do you balance this whole? You appear to not be so much of a control freak, as you say. How do you balance this whole wanting to be in control with your garden, but also wanting to let it be natural? How does this work in a way?
Okay, that's interesting, because I'm thinking, I don't want to be in control of my garden, but I do, because there I am trying to, there I am ripping everything out that shouldn't be there. Oh, that's a really good question. I guess I've been talking a lot about what I would like, and for me, what's actually happening is that I'm not in control of the garden at all.
Do you feel that maybe not being in control of the garden might be something to do with its stress relief properties at the moment at all, or no, or
maybe you mean it's easier to be relieved of the stress because I don't have. This is exactly what it's got to look like.
Just does this control does the chaotic nature of your garden change the way you view of yourself as a control freak or not?
Yeah, that's really interesting, because I am actually a fairly chaotic person in one way, and therefore my garden is just, my current yard is just an expression of myself. And trying to get more in control, then is that a bad thing? Oh my God.
Does your garden want to be controlled?
Yeah, here's the interesting thing, Ben. I was thinking when you asked that.
Yeah.
All I feel that I'm doing is keeping on top of it, not being completely out of control yard-wise.
Yeah.
And I'm not really doing a very good job of controlling it, which suits me fine. So I'm kind of just responding to what needs to be done almost. But then, okay, so maybe it's making me be more in control than I really should be, because I didn't think about it before when I was saying I do something and then I think, I want to do some more. but I'm actually taking more control.
It's interesting.
Conundrum.
Yeah.
No, I think it's interesting to talk about, but I think it's all good.
Yeah.
Yeah. But certainly, it's not out of control yet. My control isn't out of control yet.
It's very hard to know these degrees of control and out of control. Like it seems like your gardening activities may not be the ones that where you. So what would your vision of a garden might be somewhat different to other people's vision of a garden.
Yeah.
How could you describe the difference between your vision and another person's vision of a garden? Maybe someone from a different age demographic or a different, I don't know, place of living or whatnot, or story.
I think a lot of people my age are definitely trying to be in control of their garden by having it be neat and orderly and everything in place. I live quite close to some other people, even a bit older than me, and they're out there all the time. They would call themselves gardeners. Their space is beautiful, but it's not only are they obsessive in their attention, but it has to look it has to be. It's mostly the woman actually in this case, as it turns out, but it's got to be just so, and everything has to be plucked out that isn't perfect, and that's pretty heavy control issue. So I think a lot of gardeners do definitely like to keep things in control. A lot of older gardeners, because they and to the point that they're sort of the people who are going to want to spray, get rid of things that doesn't fit into the picture in their head of what. If anything's going to upset their garden, it's a problem.
So is your vision different from this, of your garden, the way it was ideally?
Yeah, again, just rawer, more natural, more... yeah, less rigid.
Rigid, okay.
Less structured and rigid, yeah.
Would you feel, how do you think of starting from a rigid garden to building it up? Because it seems you are maybe starting from a less controlled point to try to gain more control. Would you feel you would take a different approach if you started from a very controlled point and moved it towards so right now it seems like it's too free and you're trying to make it the right amount of free, but if it were let's say completely empty with just rocks and soil and then you were building it up, would you say that would change your approach to gardening in some sort of way?
I don't think so. For me, I think I would still want, because I think it's an expression, for me anyway, it's an expression of who I am as opposed to what I want the garden, or what I think the garden should look like.
Yeah.
It's what I want it to look like as opposed to, this would be what the garden looks as.
Because that's a bit like starting from someone else's finished point.
Yeah.
And then now you kind of just want the middle bit of things.
That's a very interesting point. Starting from what?
Like, yeah, some people would rather a neat garden, which just doesn't need to be managed at all, where as opposed to. So, do you feel that you would rather start a new garden? If you had the option to start a new garden, would you start from a blank canvas, or would you start from something that's already alive and natural and try to
work with it?
control, I understand maybe the word control
Yeah,
might
yeah.
be a bit negative to you.
Try to rein it in
Yeah,
a
exactly.
bit. Yeah,
Would
probably.
you try to build the environment up or
Oh.
take it to
In an
tame
i-
it? To
In
tame
an
it.
ideal world, yes, but build it from nothing.
Yeah.
But for me, due to other constraints,
Absolutely.
that would
Plus, it might be unnatural already. Maybe you wouldn't. Would you feel different about moving to a new house if it didn't have a garden? You said before that if you would move to an apartment,
Yeah.
you would probably try to bring this
Garden
hobby with you in some sort of adaptive way. Would you feel different about moving to a house which is has a pebbly garden, or just a, like, let's say it's just plants, just grass? Or would you rather move to one where there's already plants growing and stuff?
Already, yeah. I would rather move to something where there was already plants growing and you kind of morph that or work with that, because knowing myself well enough that, if it's going to be hard, lots of hard work or less work, I'm going to take the less work.
Okay.
But I don't like the bare. Yeah, look, and all that, what you said before, something rather that work, where there was garden was tidy and structured and there wasn't a lot of work. All garden is work.
Yeah.
Always. It just doesn't look. People who are really avid about it it doesn't look like it's work.
Mm.
Whether it's really, really or in poor shape or really, really excellent shape, who's doing the work might change.
Yeah.
Somebody might be paying somebody else to do the work. They're not doing their own garden, and the garden looks great. So to me,
Doesn't really matter that much.
no, well, not to them, but it would be interesting. It just begs the question about the gardening.
Yeah.
Because if you're not actually getting the pleasure from doing the gardening, but you're getting the pleasure from having
The result.
having the garden,
Yeah.
it's still good, but not the same.
Okay. So, how do you feel about people who bring in a gardener? That's a...
It's fine. Everybody needs a job. It's good.
Oh, okay. So yeah, but would you think of them differently as people who interact with gardens if they were paying for
No,
it?
only if they said they were avid gardeners.
Oh,
I
okay.
guess I'd sort of go, oh, really? But, is it what's it to me? Nothing.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
You would still, well, I guess they would just have a different way of interacting with it.
Exactly. They're still getting all the visual pleasure, all the oxygen, all the green.
Yeah, that just comes back to that whole concept of interacting with the hobby compared to actually participating in it.
Doing the hard yakka, yeah. Because everybody, as we get older, people can't do the same stuff. Older, I won't be able to. I'm doing the weeding now because 10 years time I won't be able to get out there and pull out those suckers.
What kind of in the next 10, 15, 20 years, how do you feel like your experience with gardening and your interaction with the hobby will change?
Scale down, because as I get older, it's funny. I won't have I would be crazy to try and maintain a big yard. Going forward, in the next whatever, I'll probably stay where I am for a while, but it won't be. I won't have I think I'll have the good sense from a practical perspective of not being able, not trying to look after property like I have now. So, funnily enough, I think that's a little bit why I'm also getting into it now, because I think I'm going to lose this, and not entitlement. Oh, I can't think of the word I want, but I'm going to lose this benefit one day. So get into it, enjoy it while I can. Both because of living somewhere else and also because our bodies start to let us down.
So
Can't get out
you
there.
already anticipate this change. Is there any thoughts of how you will change your hobbies and stuff as this as time does pass?
Yes, no. Yes, because I think it's everybody as we start to age starts to think about it a little bit, but no, because I still want to dwell in the denial zone for a little while longer.
Yeah, okay,
Yeah.
fair enough.
Yeah, because it's not. I'm not bad in. I don't have any reason to think I'm going to be losing my abilities in a big hurry.
Yeah.
So it's a 5-year plus plan, not imminent.
Yes.
Yeah.
Would you consider changing where you live because of this kind of a thing? Maybe to a smaller place or something? Because the let's say right now you are capable to do the garden, but if that were to change, would the role of the garden change in terms of how it affects you mentally?
Yeah. If I think about it, I would hope that realistically, by addressing the new reality, part of that would be realizing that I just have to scale. I would have to scale down on that as well, and therefore having a tomato and a lettuce tray and some herbs and a bunch and with some flowers over there would bring me equal joy
Okay.
proportionally, because you're not outlaying all the energy
Yeah.
on that yet. So you've got to. I don't know, but
Yeah.
I do think about it. I do worry about it a little bit, but I'm going to assume and go with, okay, I do less work, I might get less back, but whatever the minimum requirement, I will find whatever the minimum requirement is to satisfy that. That provision of joy.
So
Which could be quite small,
yes.
because there's a whole bunch less to stress about,
Mm.
and you're still getting. I believe it can be quite small. I believe, hopefully, that as a part of realistic aging, I won't think, but I haven't got my huge, big black yard of time-consuming. Yeah, but who knows? But that's what I hope.
Do you feel that people who would employ a gardener would be trying to avoid something like that, like the disappointment of not having the time, or what?
More ability, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
do you think that is some sort of coping mechanism to the fact that they are
Yeah.
not able to?
Yeah. Their abilities have changed. They're lucky enough to be in the position to. In fact, that's when you put it like that. I've zoomed that up on the scale of okayness now. Because if they can afford to do that and have their garden, and somebody else has got a job, that's just woo.
Interesting.
It's a win-win.
Hmm.
But I hadn't thought about it that way. I
Okay.
probably do have a little bit of not deliberate bias.
Yeah.
Well off.
Obviously,
In that
I feel
way.
like if you're you know the hard work associated to something, then you kind of would take it for granted a little bit less in a way, like maybe something like that could be the case there. I'm not really sure.
Yeah.
Well, anyway, I think we have been talking for very long. If you have anything else that you would want to talk about on the gardening spectrum, or any questions about the topic or the
Right.
research I'm doing at all, anything at all, you would be interested in knowing, or
I would be very interested to be present when and if you get to speak to someone who really is a gardener.
oh, okay.
Really is a gardener. No,
Well-
because it would be very different conversation.
Yeah.
And that's what's so interesting about
Mm.
people, right?
Yeah.
And any topic and any hobby.
Yeah, so, well, there I won't be talking to anybody else, actually. There's only four interviews going on with my 4 group members, each individually getting an interview. So it's a lot more looking into the actual individual's perspective and their interaction for this first phase of data collection, rather than trying to accumulate a lot of data from a large population kind of thing, which is a little bit more like what we will be doing in later
Right.
quantitative bits. This is the qualitative part of it, so it's a bit more natural, a bit more human kind of thing that you've been.
Oh, well, I hope that it's been useful.
It's
That
been,
is well.
yeah, well,
It's
I
been
appreciate it.
interesting to
Yeah,
talking to you,
it's
yeah.
been nice, and I think that
I think we picked a good spot.
yeah, exactly. I feel like we were in the city's garden here,
That
so we
way.
did pretty good in finding a place to
No.
talk about
Yeah,
nature and gardening.
Well, exactly.
Yeah.
Yay, high five us.
Okay.
No, I mean, I don't have anything miraculously brainstorming to add. I just hope I've been loud enough.
Oh, I think it should be okay. All right, so we've talked a bit about so we've come to the end of the interview. We've talked a bit about your experiences with stress and how that's to do with sometimes about control and those kind of things, and maybe the lack of control. We've talked about the fact that negative emotions usually come from stress. Sometimes maybe even positive things can come of it, but most of the time it's usually a little bit more negative. We talked about the how you manage your stress and the activities that you use, and those kind of things. And so, as in, like you like to go cycling as well as nature and outdoorsy kind of experiences really help with that. And then we shifted our focus a bit more to gardening and tried to find an idea of what gardening means to you, what the views of what is a gardener, what is the activity of gardening, can it be physical or a part of an interest, just an interest,
Yeah,
or
more remote.
a remote interest, that kind of idea. How it has changed over time and how it may change in the future over time, and also about the rewards and the processes of gaining those rewards, and what really is the rewarding aspect of gardening and why it makes it positive, and how it interacts with your levels of stress kind of thing. Is there anything you'd like to add to any of those ideas in that brief summary?
No, you've summarised way better than me. That's brilliant. I can barely remember what I said 5 minutes ago. No, I think you've got through some interesting stuff there and made some good connections. No, I think
Okay.
that's good.
Any
Yeah.
final questions at all?
No, I don't.
All right. Well, thank you very much for your participation. It has been invaluable. If you have any questions regarding this at any point in the future, feel free to contact me at any time. And thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Tomasz. Very much, Tomasz. Very much, Tomasz. Very much, Tomasz.